Welcome to the Workology Podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader. Join host Jessica Miller Merrill, founder of Workology.com, as she sits down and gets to the bottom of trends, tools, and case studies for the business leader, HR, and recruiting professional who is tired of the status quo. Now here's Jessica with this episode of Workology.
Having a diverse workforce is good business. A McKensey 2015 diversity report found that ethnically diverse companies are 35% more likely to outperform industry medians. Question is, how do companies hire, retain, and do outreach to diverse candidate communities? Today, we're specifically going to be talking about veterans and military. I'm joined today with Caleb Pask. He's the Associate Director of Diversity, Military, and Social Media with the Talent Attraction Team at AT&T. Caleb, welcome to the Workology Podcast.
Hi.
Talk to us a little bit about your background and how long you've been with AT&T and kind of what your focus is on, because diversity, military, and social media, that's a lot of things.
Yeah, they don't seem to go together, right? But they do. It's really good magic. I've been with AT&T for a little over 15 years now and have had the opportunity to work in almost every one of our business units. But for the last 2.5 years, my passion has been on this subject, and I had the opportunity to bring together what our diversity efforts were, including veterans and military spouses, with our social media, which has been a great marriage.
Awesome. And I love social media, by the way. So I think this will be a great conversation. Can you walk us through a little bit about AT&T's approach to military outreach and recruiting?
Definitely. So I got the great honor of building on what is really a long-term legacy of AT&T supporting the military community and our veterans. Long predates me, but what it's done by having that history is allow us to really build on that and establish a strong employer brand to tell the military, to tell veterans that we support them, not only their community as veterans, but as employees within our business. With that, we've been able to launch some really strong initiatives, including our current one, which is to hire more than 20,000 veterans by 2020. And we're more than 12,000 into that target that we started in 2013. But to get there, it's a lot of things. And we're looking at large scale and big numbers to hire 20,000 veterans in just a handful of years. The biggest piece of this is to use content marketing and treat our efforts to attract veterans to AT&T the same way that we reach out to consumers to attract them to our products. Our opportunities and our jobs are part of our brand, and we want people to want to be a part of it. We do that by storytelling and sharing the success of veterans here, what they do, and really the depth and breadth of what AT&T has to offer.
Caleb, can you talk to us a little bit more about content marketing and what that means for the talent attraction team and diversity recruiting?
Definitely. So content marketing to us is really the best way to reach candidates in this space. We can put job ads out. We could buy magazine pages for advertising if we wanted to, but content marketing, especially in a digital method, is really the best way for us to share our story. And that's how we've been able to connect with so many veterans that want to work for AT&T, is to share stories of our current veterans. In doing that, we share the stories, meaning a write-up, a positive write-up about a veteran who works for AT&T, and one who has had an opportunity to develop their career with us or has recently transitioned, and let them assimilate their story to the veterans who may be considering AT&T. If they can see that someone who was a communications chief, maybe in the Army, has had great success here, then it adds on to our storyline of being a great place to work for veterans, and lets them picture themselves here by seeing that story. And we share that both via social media, the platforms that I manage for AT&T, as well as on our careers website, and even as a link back once some of our programmatic advertising may kick in to target veterans or military spouses at certain times of the year when we turn that on.
So what mediums are you using? Is it video? Is it photography? Is it written content? All of the above?
It's really written content most of the time, supported by video and photography. We, even as big as we are, producing tons of high quality video content can be problematic. It takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, but the ability to create written content and support it with good photography, or even photography that it isn't so good, so it feels organic and it feels real versus some of the stock imagery that many companies use, has helped us connect with veterans. And it really calls out to them because we know that they're willing to let us know that they're veterans when they come into the system.
Caleb, you mentioned programmatic advertising. Can you walk us through real fast what that is for folks that might not know?
Definitely. So it's something new to us in terms of how we use it, although it's a pretty standard marketing practice when we look at our marketing firms, I say across the street, our consumer marketing teams. But what it is once an applicant or a potential applicant expresses any interest in AT&T roles related to veterans that we may have tagged as veteran specific or military spouse specific. And that could mean they've clicked on something, they've watched something, they read an article, one of the pieces of content that we put out there, we're then able to keep our content front and center with them. We keep our advertising in front of them by having it pop up on a programmatic basis to them in different areas. So it could be a banner ad on a website that they visit a few weeks later, and all of that would then drive them back into AT&T or AT&T platform. So what it does is allow us to stay in touch with the candidate, and we know that they often have to see our content 2 or 3 times before they may actually come and apply with us, especially if they're a passive candidate. We have to be in front of them. So it's just a way to extend what we're doing from a content marketing perspective and hold on to that candidate's potential interest.
I love that. And it's the reason today, after I was looking at some clothes on Gap for my daughter, that this one dress kept following me around on the internet. So you are using tactics that traditional marketers would use for the purposes of engaging the veteran military community digitally.
Yeah, we do that, and we do ramp it up while we don't have our programmatic efforts turned on every month all year long, just from a cost perspective. When we have heavy seasons of content, or when we're creating new things, or we've gotten new interviews, we definitely turn that on because we want people to, once they see it in different places, be able to loop that back to us.
Well, I love programmatic, and I definitely think it's creative, but what are some other ways that you're using technology to engage and reach this segment of the community?
Definitely. So we're reaching them through our content marketing and through having our jobs visible and present in all the places that veterans or military spouses or military families go to find jobs, which are most often the same places other people do. But some interesting ways that we're engaging with the audience includes our own veteran job advisor sessions. So there are with us, there are 9 different diversity segments that we look at, but veterans and military spouses are the only ones that we do job advisor sessions with, meaning that we have on our att.jobs portal a link where a veteran or military spouse can sign up for what is almost one-on-one communication with our military talent advisor. They have the ability to sign up for a session, get on a face-to-face video chat. Whether they want to show their face or not is completely up to them, but they get insight to AT&T that really no other candidates get. And we also help to translate many times the way the conversations go. We translate what they've done in the military or what their experiences are since military to what they could be doing at AT&T. So we're bridging that gap, and that's using a face-to-face web chat opportunity. And there may be more than one on there, but sometimes it's just one-on-one, and we're able to connect directly to those applicants and give them a taste of AT&T.
And I imagine that you're helping more candidates than those who end up applying and being hired at your company. So it's probably a large number of candidates that you're engaging, and also you're getting a lot of street credibility, I guess, in the veteran and military community that says, hey, these are the guys to go to if you want resources and information as well as a job.
It's definitely the case, and we have referrals, people referring others to come talk to us, and we know that many times these folks are either not in an area where we have jobs or where they want to have a job. Maybe we don't have the opening in their field, but we've gotten success cases back of them sharing that they got a job, sometimes maybe with a competitor or with somebody else in the field, and we're happy about that. If we're good stewards of the community, we build credibility, and we continue to get more and more applications based off referral.
I love that. Good stewards of the community. I think that is something that hopefully many of the podcast listeners are thinking about. And sometimes it's hard to connect all the dots and be able to say, I was able to bring a percentage of military candidates to my organization to actually apply for their jobs. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about partnerships, because I think those are really critical in diversity recruiting and particularly in your good faith efforts. How are partnerships working for you, or what do those look like?
Partnerships are essential for us. So we look at it in really two different buckets. We have our internal partnerships within the company, and we have our external ones. And I'll start there. Probably the biggest has been our relationship with the Veteran Jobs Mission. It was originally known as the 100,000 Jobs Mission, but was recently changed. And we were a founding member of that with JP Morgan to create what was the 100,000 Jobs Mission and really talk about bringing veteran jobs into corporate America. These are all large corporate companies that have affinity programs towards this. So that partnership was probably first and foremost, and it allowed us to branch into some other areas, including a recent partnership with the White House just this last year for veterans and tech jobs that allowed us to extend our commitment. So we decided to go to 20,000 veterans by 2020 instead of our original 10,000 goal, but also then get the prominence of our partners, in this case, the White House, to share the message too. In fact, from a social perspective, our tweet from the White House talking about this was our most celebrated and our most engaged social media message of all of 2016.
I want to find that tweet and we can embed it into the transcript so people can see. How exciting is that to have the support of the White House recognizing you for your military recruiting efforts?
It was very exciting and a great moment for our whole team, including our military talent attraction manager, who was recognized by Dr. Biden at that time.
Wow. Well, let's take a bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast. Today, we're talking with Caleb Pask from AT&T about veteran and military recruiting programs. And he just dropped the bomb that the White House tweeted about their military hiring efforts. I think that should be on everybody's bucket list that is in this space. Let's talk a little bit about compliance, because we're talking about good faith efforts and we're talking about all the different things that you're doing and partnerships and the different outreach. But military recruiting, in my opinion, and probably many others that are listening here, has gotten more challenging since the OFCCP made changes in 2014, specifically around hiring benchmarks. And for those who don't know, a hiring benchmark is an annual percentage that the Department of Labor provides for you, and federal contractors need to ensure that a certain percentage of candidates, that benchmark, those candidates identify, and which in this case is military. And last year, the hiring benchmark set by the Department of Labor was 6.9%. So 6.9% of all candidates who applied, your organization, if you're a federal contractor, should self-identify as military in order to be able to stay above board with the OFCCP. Can you talk a little bit about the hiring process and where your candidates, military specifically, self-identifies?
Oh, definitely. So we've gone through our own iterations of this, and since the rules changed, we had to augment what we were doing to make it a little bit more robust. Although we've been capturing our veteran military candidates for quite a while now, but in the process, we actually do it in two places. One, right at the beginning of the application. Once they go through our onboarding process, that's when we get what is the kind of the official check mark for us on, are they a veteran? And that's what we then are able to report out on our hire numbers, of course. but that's also after they've been a little bit more enveloped around some of the company's affinity for veterans. So we do see some slight difference from the application to after they've been selected, but not very much, and it kind of vacillates. So we feel good that our employer brand is out in front, letting people know that it's a good thing to self-disclose as a veteran because the company is positively affirming, what we want to bring to this community and how we have jobs and want to hire veterans into AT&T.
Well, if you're doing the job advisor sessions specifically for military, you're building that trust in that relationship. And so what I'm hearing is the hiring benchmark, really there's candidates who are self-identifying in two places, at the beginning of the application immediately and then in the onboarding process.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, can you talk about maybe how others can maybe get their candidates to self-identify? Because you guys have had some really great success. So what are some suggestions maybe you have for somebody who's looking at increasing their percentage above the 6.9% expectation from our friends at the OFCCP?
Definitely. So I can't stress this enough. And this is a common topic, whether it's at our veteran jobs missions meetings with the other coalition members, or even we held our own veteran employment summit here in Dallas last summer to bring in the Dallas-Fort Worth area employers interested in veteran hiring to talk about. But the biggest thing is to have leadership support in your own organization and then to be out in front of it. I know that not everybody listening has the same media budget or the same prevalence in media that maybe AT&T does, but from a one-on-one candidate connection standpoint, if you have a leader in your organization, that's whether they're a veteran or non-veteran, if they're a veteran, that's even better, but out there talking about the positive benefits of having veterans at their organization, you will see the rise in your applicant disclosure numbers because you have somebody with status in an organization saying, this is important to us, you are important to us, which then eliminates that fear that we know some veterans have about disclosing, the fear of stigma. And this is especially for kind of our pre-9/11 veterans too, which had a much different feel in the workplace than some of our post-9/11 veterans do.
You mentioned that you guys are looking at 20,000 hires by 2020. Can you share a ballpark of where you're at in terms of percentages of candidates that are self-identifying as military?
Yeah, so that 20,000 goal is 2020 and is fast approaching. We're a little over 12,000 total hires into that. And from a percentage of candidate or hires that we're making, we're north of 10% for the last 2 years as we've been looking at some very specific details about those applicants and hires coming into the company.
10%. That's amazing. And so I would say reach out to Caleb if you have questions. It sounds like AT&T with their summit program locally is really leading the charge, and you're willing to share, which I absolutely love.
It's been fun, and we've learned from companies small and large, which is why we had it here. Other groups like Southwest were here talking about what they're doing or what they want to do, and small local employers who wanted to get into the game, we invited to participate in the conversation.
Can you talk about what you're most excited right now when it comes to AT&T diversity recruiting efforts? Doesn't necessarily need to be military, but anything that you are just really proud and excited about that's upcoming or that you're working on right now?
Well, there's so many things to be excited about. Probably the biggest thing across the company is that we've gotten integration in our efforts being much more than just talent acquisition or human resources. Last fall, our CEO took to the stage at our Employee Resource Group Summit and really laid out the roadmap of diversity at the organization. So again, this is the leadership being out in front of it. And highlighting what is a movement for us to go from tolerance of other cultures and other people to really understanding one another. And he's asked us as employees to lead that charge towards true understanding internally. And we think we could be this microcosm of what we want to be or what the world to be with our own 280,000 employees here. But some of the big things that I think are most exciting, that we're working on are related to all of our women in STEM efforts and how we've been able to really move the needle in bringing incoming applicants for an organization like us that has historically been a telephone company and is turning quickly into a media company when you think about DirecTV or some other potential mergers that are coming around the corner, and a true technology company with the data and the insights and the work that we're doing to really connect the world. Our women in STEM efforts have moved the needle by highlighting our own women here in the organization and then participating in that broader community. It's similar to what we've been talking about with veterans, but having organizations, even a couple of weeks ago, joining in our Women Tech Talk Twitter chat, participants from Girls Who Code and Women Who Code and the National Center for Women in Technology joined our chat to share this message, to join in a broad platform and talk about what we're doing. And we think that's incredible because it's, again, going back to the community who supports, in this case, women and women in technology, and asking them to lend their voices to together make it even bigger and broader.
This is the second time in the 2 podcasts that we've recorded and folks I've spoke to in the diversity space that have mentioned that they do Twitter chats. So we've had the American Heart Association that hosts their own, and I just saw the recent numbers that they had 3 million impressions nearly from their Twitter chat. But you guys are doing something a little bit different where you're doing a Women Tech Talk Twitter chat where other organizations and candidates and people in the conversation can join in.
Yeah, it's been fantastic asking what we refer to as our influencers. We're not paying them. We don't have a paid relationship, but they know that we're advocates for the community, and because of that, they're willing to come on and join. So it was a great mix of both external influencers and what we call our own internal influencers. Some of our women in tech who work for the company, who are in some form of a leadership position or have a great title and they're socially apt, they come on and join that conversation. We're able to promote them as individuals, help build their brand. And we know that builds loyalty. If we're building their brand as a great leader in the organization, they're going to stay with us. So it's beyond just talent acquisition, but we're talking retention and lifting up our own employees as well as these other organizations that participate with us to really remain relevant and be out in front of this.
I love it. I love it so much. And thank you, Caleb, for joining us today and talking with us about all things related to diversity and military and veteran recruiting. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, you can find me at Caleb Pask on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn.
I think sometimes we get too caught up in the minutia and the details when it comes to diversity recruiting and forget about what matters. That's about hiring diverse candidates to drive new ideas, revenue, and impacting the bottom line. I hope today we've shed some light, provided you some examples, and answered some questions in regards to compliance as well as diversity best practices when it comes to recruiting your veterans and military. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes. Have a great day.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.
Into a media company when you think about DirecTV or some other potential mergers that are coming around the corner, and a true technology company with the data and the insights and the work that we're doing to really connect the world. Our women in STEM efforts have moved the needle by highlighting our own women here in the organization and then participating in that broader community. It's similar to what we've been talking about with veterans, but having organizations, even a couple of weeks ago, joining in our Women Tech Talk Twitter chat, participants from Girls Who Code and Women Who Code and the National Center for Women in Technology joined our chat to share this message, to join in a broad platform and talk about what we're doing. And we think that's incredible because it's, again, going back to the community who supports, in this case, women and women in technology, and asking them to lend their voices to together make it even bigger and broader.
This is the second time in the two podcasts that we've recorded and folks I've spoke to in the diversity space that have mentioned that they do Twitter chats. So we've had the American Heart Association that hosts their own, and I just saw the recent numbers that they had 3 million impressions nearly from their Twitter chat. But you guys are doing something a little bit different where you're doing a Women Tech Talk Twitter chat where other organizations and candidates and people in the conversation can join in.
Yeah, it's been fantastic asking what, we refer to as our influencers. We're not paying them. We don't have a paid relationship, but they know that we're advocates for the community. And because of that, they're willing to come on and join. So it was a great mix of both external influencers and what we call our own internal influencers. Some of our women in tech who work for the company, who are in some form of a leadership position or have a great title and they're socially apt, they come on and join that conversation. We're able to promote them as individuals, help build their brand. And we know that builds loyalty. If we're building their brand as a great leader in the organization, they're going to stay with us. So it's beyond just talent acquisition, but we're talking retention and lifting up our own employees as well as these other organizations that participate with us to really remain relevant and be out in front of this.
I love it. I love it so much. And thank you, Caleb, for joining us today and talking with us about all things related to diversity and military and veteran recruiting. Where can people go to learn more about you and what you do?
Well, you can find me at Caleb Pask on Twitter or connect with me on LinkedIn.
I think sometimes we get too caught up in the minutia and the details when it comes to diversity recruiting and forget about what matters. That's about hiring diverse candidates to drive new ideas, revenue, and impacting the bottom line. I hope today we've shed some light, provided you some examples, and answered some questions in regards to compliance as well as diversity best practices when it comes to recruiting your veterans and military. Thank you for joining the Workology podcast, a podcast for the disruptive workplace leader who's tired of the status quo. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill. Until next time, visit workology.com to listen to all our previous podcast episodes. Have a great day.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller-Merrill provided by TotalPicture.com.